Abdullah, you're muted again.
صباح الخير جميعا السيدات والسادة، شكرا جزيلا لحضوركم معنا اليوم. نتشرف بوجودكم معنا اليوم. الآن سنبدأ في نشاطنا التحول المستدام لأنظمة الطاقة في دول الشرق الأوسط وشمال أفريقيا لإطلاق هذه الدراسة. في البداية أريد أن أحدثكم عن المميزات في هذه من خلال بوابة الزوم. رجاء يمكنكم أن تجدوا خيارات الترجمة من خلال زر Interpretation، وهو زر دائرة يمكنكم الضغط عليه واختيار اللغة التي تناسبكم. بداية النشاط أو النصف الأول من هذا النشاط سوف يكون باللغة الإنجليزية لأنه يتضمن متحدثين غير ناطقين بالعربية، فرجاء يمكنكم اختيار الترجمة للغة العربية أو حسب ما يناسبكم. الآن سأنتقل للتحدث باللغة الإنجليزية والبدء بهذا النشاط. Dear participants, good morning, and thank you all for joining us today. We're very happy that we will get finally to launch this study, this collaborative work. I just would like to tell you about the functions of the Zoom portal. If you want to access interpretation, please press the interpretation button here at Zoom. It's a circle or what resembles a globe, and then through it you can select the language that suits you best. And please, we have together with us today remarkable speakers and panelists for discussions. So please, we also count on you, all participants, to participate in the discussions. So through the chat function, please give us your thoughts, tell us where you're from, where do you work. We would also like to know your backgrounds. And if you would like to speak later, please raise your hands. We have muted everyone, but if you would like to speak or give an input, you can raise your hand. Thank you very much. And now I will give the floor to Ms. Sarah Hepp, the director of the Regional Climate and Energy Project at the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung, to present her opening remarks. Sarah, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Abdallah. Sabah al-Khair, bonjour à tous, good morning. A warm welcome to all of you and to our launch of the Comparative report, Sustainable Transformation of Energy Systems in Mina countries. In order to meet the SDGs and the Paris climate target of limiting global warming to well below 2 degrees, or to keep the 1.5 degree target alive, a rapid energy transformation is essential. And this energy transformation is a major challenge for the MENA region in particular. While some countries in the region are rich in fossil fuel resources, others are almost completely dependent on energy imports. But all countries actually have in common that a large part of their energy is produced from fossil fuels, and renewable energies only make up a small part of the energy mix. And at the same time, the potential for renewable energies with extensive solar irradiation and wind is very high. And this potential is currently untapped, and many countries are struggling to put the right conditions in place. To be fair, many countries in the region are also struggling with serious internal and regional conflicts. So country stability and peace are paramount. Likewise, the corona crisis has severely affected the economic situation of many countries. Unemployment, and especially youth unemployment, is at an unprecedented level. And this also leads to a widening gap between rich and poor, and social injustice in general. And all this leads to the fact that the fight against climate change and the energy transformation are not in the focus of attention as it should be. But I think we need to start finding an integrated solution for all these issues and not deal with them individually. What we need is a social ecological transformation that links all these issues, and more renewable energies are also a great potential actually for the labor market. New companies and numerous jobs can be created here, and countries will also become less dependent on oil and gas price fluctuations, and global developments that can influence the energy prices if the energy is produced and also consumed in their own country. In most countries, only in an upper class in the country profits actually from oil and gas. We think from our regional climate and energy project that with a decentralized energy transition, every citizen can become a prosumer and also participate in the energy market. So more renewable energies in the energy system can therefore lead to more social justice in these countries and in the Mina region. And these are the main considerations on which our cooperation with the German Wuppertal Institute is based. And the German Wuppertal Institute, they have developed a phase model for the different steps of the energy transition. And they adapted this phase model together with us for the Mina region, and applied it to 10 countries in total. In 2018, for the first time, this model was applied to Jordan. And then last year, we started a bigger regional project that applied the model to 10 countries in the region, namely to Lebanon, Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, Yemen, Israel, Palestine, Egypt, Iraq, and again, Jordan as an update. And in order to have correct figures and the best assessments of the situation in the respective countries, we have also cooperated with local organizations, partner organizations of FES, and also energy experts. And they have contributed their knowledge to these country studies. And after all these studies were completed, we also worked on a kind of synthesis in which we compared the situation and the challenges of these countries. And exactly this report is launched today in this event today, and it's available, and I will soon post the link here in the chat, now in English, Arabic, and German. And we also have created a kind of sub-website of the FES Mina website for these studies, so they all can access through this link. I will, as I said, right after my speech, I posted in the chat. As you can imagine, that this project was very demanding, and many of our colleagues invested a lot of time in it. And this is why I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all, the Wuppertal Institute, with whom the cooperation was really excellent, and who also had a lot of patience with us. And then I would like to thank all the partner organizations of FES and the experts from the 10 different countries in the region. Without this knowledge and expertise, the country studies could not have been adapted to the respective situation in these countries. Then a big thanks also to all the FES offices and colleagues who decided to participate in this regional project, to my colleague at the FES head office, Merina Bass, for a lot of coordination work, And also thanks to the Mina Climate and Energy team, to my colleagues, Dina Kispi, Farah Khalaf, and Abdallah Al-Shamali. Thanks to all proofreaders and designers. And we are very proud to present the main findings of the study series in this comparative report. And we are really delighted that so many are joining us for our launching event today. To stimulate our discussion, we have also outstanding panelists with us. We have Dr. Jawad El-Karas, the Executive Director of the Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, RICRE. And we also have Engineer Shuruk Abdelghani. She's the Director of Planning and Organizational Development within the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources in Jordan with us. And with that, I give the floor back to our moderator and my esteemed colleague, Abdallah Al-Shamali.
Thank you, Ms. Hep, and for this welcoming regards. And we will go through in this event, and we will talk about energy transition, and we'll go into further discussions. But before that, we have prepared a poll for all of the participants. Just a simple 2 questions that we would like. So everyone, let's say, we could get a grasp of an important question. So I'm going to launch a poll now. Please, you're going to see it pop up onto your screen, and then you have, I will give you about 30 seconds to answer that. So please just go ahead and answer it now. Okay, so yeah, then as an answer to this first question about the main challenges towards transitioning to 100% RE, the main challenges is political, as most people has said. Okay, and I will share the results with you now, and you can see this. Like how 70% of the people participated answered this question. And next to the second question, so you can, the second question is the actors to be engaged in the transition. Which ones do you think is the most important? So please, I'll give you also a couple of seconds to answer. All right. So, as most people have agreed that the government is the most important actor to be engaged. And second is the private sector, third is financing agencies, and last is civil society. I would like to touch that again, maybe in the discussion later. This is very interesting results. And also to our next speakers, presenters of the study. Maybe even like through your presentation, you can maybe touch upon these answers later, maybe also your points of view throughout the study. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm sure everyone is waiting to see what the study has to offer, and so I will not delay it any further. Dr. Julia Turopon-Pfaff and Ms. Sibel Raquel Ersoy, and they're both researchers at the Wuppertal Institutes. our partner and the writers of the authors of this study. So please go ahead, the floor is yours. Enlighten us with the results.
Yes, thank you very much, Abdallah. I hope you can see the presentation now. It's a pleasure to be here and present some insights from the synthesis of the different country studies. And I will jump right in and give a short overview about the Mina energy transition phase model we applied, and then hand over to my colleague Sibel, who will discuss the results with you. So the Mina energy transition phase model, can you forward? Yeah, here you can see an overview of the model we applied. As Sarah already said, we developed the model at the Wuppertal Institute together with the Friedrich Ebert Foundation, and it's based on a model for the German energy transition. But of course, the Mina region has very different preconditions. And also, as Sarah already lined out, all countries are different. We see some common features, and I want to add to the point Sarah already mentioned that all countries foresee a very steep increase in energy demand in the future, that in terms of the energy sector, we see that the energy markets are only partly liberalized or not liberalized at all. And in terms of, for example, interconnection of the electricity systems, the MENA countries are only limited interconnected compared, for example, if you look at Europe, which has a very interconnected electricity grid. But of course, the region has very high solar and wind potentials, and therefore very good preconditions in these terms to move towards 100% renewables. And such a model is, of course, a simplification of the reality, but we assume that the energy transition as a whole will take place in 4 major phases, which are connected to 4 really relevant system innovations. And the first one is the renewable energies themselves, as an introduction in phase 1. And because of before renewables really can take off and become an integrated share of the electricity markets, we see a pre-phase where we, for example, have some pilot projects, where we have potential assessments for renewables, and where first research and active networks form. And then in the next phase, renewables become an integrated part of the electricity system and market. And from there on, we move towards system integration. So when we see an increasing share of renewable electricity, we need more flexibility options and sector coupling options to accommodate this increasing shares of electricity. And in this phase, also slowly, renewables start to replace fossil fuels. And then following this, with the large availability of low-cost electricity, we see an increase in power to gas and power to fuels technologies. This is basically what we are currently talking a lot about when we talk about green hydrogen and synthetic fuels. So these become an integrated part of the system. And then the last step would be the movement towards really 100% renewables, not only in the electricity system, but in the energy system as a whole. And in this phase, we would see the phase out of fossil fuels. And in the MENA countries, we could also imagine a larger export of renewable-based fuels, because you have this great potential, and renewable fuels could become a new export commodity, which is now, like, for example, fossil fuels that could be replaced by renewable fuels. And these different phases of the transition take place at different levels. And in this study, can you please forward, Sibel? In these different phases take place at different levels. On the top, we have the landscape level, which are developments that take place and are not really fully connected to the energy system, but influence the energy system. For example, demographic developments, or also regional or national conflicts, but also international climate change development. So they put pressure on the existing energy system, which is here shown as the regime level. And then on the bottom, we have this technology developments I described before, like the renewable energies picking up, then followed by flexibility options and sector coupling options, and then power to gas and power to fuel technologies. And they come into the existing energy system. And of course, the existing energy system then has to adapt. And the more renewables come into the system, the more the current energy system changes or adjusts towards a new energy system based on renewables. This was a really basic overview about the theoretical background, and I would hand over to my colleague Sibel to present some of the real results now.
Yes, thank you so much. I hope you can hear me. And also, first of all, thank you from my side for inviting to this launching event and the opportunity to present the results of the joint project. I'm very happy to see so many of our local partners today present here. So I will go a little bit more into detail of the results of applying the phase model to the selected countries and guide you as well through this presentation. So we had a set of different criteria. We looked into detail for each country, and here you find some of the criteria and of the countries that we studied. And you see already that the development on the regime level by introducing renewables has already started in most of the selected countries. So the dark green dots, they stand for completed, the clear green dots for planned, and the circles for a missing stage. And we certainly can say that particularly PV and wind energy, they already have been introduced on a small but also on a large scale in most of the countries. Iraq, Palestine, or Yemen are located more on an initial stage, while Jordan, Morocco are more at an advanced stage. So you see they have a lot of green, like dark green dots already, and Morocco actually achieved already the second phase and deals to a greater extent with aspects that are really important for this phase, such as, for example, grid expansion or flexibility potential, storage, and so on. But most of the countries, we can say, they have reached already the first phase. I selected for this presentation some relevant indicators to show more or less which data we used to analyze the current stage of one particular country. And here we listed the renewable shares and as well the renewable energy targets that the countries individually set. And all analyzed countries have set renewable energy targets. And in most countries, these targets, they focus more on the share of renewables in the electricity sector by 2030. And some countries such as Egypt, Israel, Jordan, Morocco are well on their way to meet their targets. And you can see here on this graph, Morocco is actually, well, a leader with 52% renewable energy targets by 2030, which is likely to be achieved much sooner than 2030, as the deployment is progressing very fast. And yeah, but in overall, it can be seen that the countries with more limited fossil energy resources, they have set very ambitious targets, while exporting countries like Algeria or Iraq, they have rather lower targets set and need to step up their efforts. And in countries with difficult political situation, for example, Yemen or Palestine, renewable energy development is mainly driven by small-scale solar energy systems. The MENA countries in general, they are characterized by a steadily rising generation of electricity, and the electricity used within these countries is mostly produced by central national power plants, as no extensive international grid exists so far. So power plants running on natural gas or fuel oil as energy source clearly dominate the power plant fleet throughout the considerate countries, despite, of course, the renewable energy progress. And as you see here, clearly coal is used mainly in Morocco and Israel, Palestine as well, but as Palestine is supplied by the Israeli grid, the numbers can be considered as being the same. Policy measures, they have certainly implications on the renewable energy development. And here I can make a short link or a quick link to the initial questions of the poll. So state regulation is important when a niche innovation is introduced in a region. And it needs that technologies first are supported in order to achieve a certain market-based level. And here I show the case of Israel, which shows this progress very well. So for example, you see here in 2009, the introduction of the net metering regulation supported the upward trend, and as well in 2017, the introduction of PV auctions in the market had an impact on the solar development on Israel. So you see a steady increase in the electricity generation by renewables, and especially solar PV. And just to show you another quick example, in Egypt, we can as well identify a clear upward trend in the renewable energy, renewable electricity generation after the introduction, for example, of the solar plan in 2012, or the feed-in tariff, the new renewable energy law, and tax incentives as well in 2015. And these policies, they clearly helped to increase the wind and solar PV share in the national electricity mix. So I ignored here a little bit the hydropower share in relation with the policy measures, as Egypt used to be, let's say, a hydropower nation. So hydropower is one of the oldest renewable energy technology used in Egypt, but it's highly vulnerable to the natural conditions of water availability, as hydropower plants usually do not have the highest priority when there is, for example, a drought occurring. So the hydropower generation depends a lot on the climate and precipitation conditions. So the infrastructure was as well one of the dimensions that we looked into more detail, because the energy transition requires, of course, the modernization and development of generation, transmission, but also the distribution infrastructure. And here I'm showing the example of Yemen. Yemen just as one small grid in the southern western region, which is actually not well working as a consequence from the war, and also the attacks on the power infrastructure. And the grid infrastructure in Yemen is not able to deliver power in all parts, so the demand cannot be served. And what happens is that that private diesel generators compensate this, and this is also why the oil share, you saw it in the beginning in Yemen, the oil share in Yemen in the electricity generation is so high. And the circles, they represent basically the loads. So the black dotted ones, they are the generated and transmitted electrical energy. The red one is the total diesel energy consumed, and the red circles are in some parts even bigger than the black ones, meaning that diesel generators are mainly used to serve the power demand. And in Yemen, this diesel black market has increased and developed so increasingly that it turned basically the situation into a very unsustainable manner. And we can say for Yemen that it has a highly dysfunctional energy system that is also very fragmented, with a lot of decentralized energy system that deliver the energy to people. But Yemen is so far an interesting case as solar PV decentralized system. They have sold to a great extent the energy poverty in Yemen. So they call it as a solar revolution. However, for a larger energy transition, the need for a reliable infrastructure system is indispensable to accommodate as well large-scale renewables. And the next example is Algeria. So it is evident that that's the most load centers, they are located in the north coastal region, where the grid is expanded, but the south is actually completely gridless. And interesting in Algeria is that almost 90% of the country is covered by the Sahara Desert. And at the same time, the southern regions, they join the highest solar potentials, while the load centers are located far in the north. So there is accordingly a huge challenge to transmit the generated power in the south to the demand centers in the north. The power sector in most MENA countries is characterized in general by a high degree of governmental control and regulation. And today the existing power market shows a narrow openness, and participation of the private sector is strongly restricted. Additionally, the electricity generation sector comes from a tradition of very vertically integrated and also state-owned utilities operating within a monopoly covering the generation, transmission, and distribution. However, there are some countries that started already a process of reforming and to unbundle the power sector, which is here shown by the case of Morocco. So today, the private participation comes mainly through auctioning tenders, which hire independent power producers that own facilities. And Morocco has as well created with the Moroccan Agency for Sustainable Energy, Mazen, one-stop shop, let's call it like this, that facilitates the implementation of renewables project. And Mazen promotes and develops renewable energy projects and clearly drives the energy transition as an independent institution. And important also to mention is that Morocco is one of the few countries with an independent energy regulator, UNRE, that has become operational last year. So in Lebanon, as another example, the electricity market is formed around the Ministry of Energy and Water, and the power sector can be considered as a monopoly of generation, production, and distribution. And I selected Lebanon here to show as an example because I think Lebanon has very interesting institutions, facilities, and also laws that are well important for renewable energy uptake. However, most of them, they do not work properly, or laws remain just on paper without being implemented, which is, for example, the case of the law 462 that came into force in 2002 and mandates an unbundled electricity market, also with the establishment of an independent authority, regulatory authority, which actually did not happen so far. And this law exists only on paper and leaves the Lebanese electricity sector highly dysfunctional. And stemming from this, the electricity sector in Lebanon is characterized by power undersupply with chronic shortages. And in this frame, also the private diesel generation generators, they operate outside the legally authorized mechanism. And this is also tolerated by the policymakers as they tackle the challenge of the power undersupply. And this is also why you see in Lebanon, in one of the first slides, that the oil share in the electricity generation is very high. So overall, the electricity sector is the largest contributor to CO2 emissions in all countries studied, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions under the Paris Agreement is one of the key drivers of the global efforts to transition, of course, and this is also true for Mina. But other concerns, such as meeting, for example, the rising demand, or reducing import dependence, but also enhancing energy security, as well as economic development, as Sarah said in the introduction, are equally, but maybe if not more, driving the energy transition in the countries. And in general, all countries, they have committed in their NDCs to reduce their emissions, and some even have updated the NDCs, like Jordan or Morocco. But in fact, we see that almost in all countries, the emissions are rising, except for Yemen and Israel. Yemen, it's a war-related slump in the electricity generation in Israel because of the conversion of the electricity generation from coal, oil power plants to natural gas power plants. And yeah, in general, this trend might continue as renewable energy is not yet replacing fossil fuels in most of the countries, as the demand is growing so strongly. Detailed information on the awareness and acceptance of renewable energies in the countries studied is often very limited, but we can say that where small-scale residential solar energy applications are more widespread, as for example in Yemen, Palestine, Israel, Jordan, or Tunisia, the knowledge and awareness seems to be generally higher, as people there are directly involved in the realization. But also negative experiences with solar systems can lead to a spread of bad reputation when the equipment, for example, is of low quality, which was the case in Egypt and Yemen, or also when there is a lack of qualified staff to establish the facilities. And strong institutions in Jordan and Morocco, they can help to raise the awareness and acceptance of renewables and provide as well technical training. But overall, for Mina, more awareness and knowledge at institutional level, for example, in the private and banking sector, is needed. And then the next step for us was to look into niche innovations in the countries, and they differ clearly in the studied countries. And some of the innovations are listed here in this graph. For instance, renewables are in an early stage, and the niche in Algeria, in Lebanon, Iraq, Palestine, and Yemen, as let's say local pilots, they remain very limited, or technology assessments are not yet available, and also these listed countries, they miss so far large-scale projects, although having targets. While Egypt, Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, Jordan, they are more advanced, and here, for example, e-mobility presents a niche innovation, with Egypt, for example, having introduced a tax exemption for e-vehicles, or a clear niche in the second phase represents the testing of demand-side management measures, such as smart meters, or also storage options, which is quite advanced in Israel and Jordan, among other countries. And aspects from the third phase, they have partly started in some countries, and focus on this phase is more the sector coupling and how to decarbonize hard to abate sectors. And for instance, Morocco is here quite advanced in exploring hydrogen technologies, but also piloting green hydrogen and ammonia projects, and has already published a hydrogen strategy, while in Tunisia and Jordan still prepare the strategy. And to summarize the results, we rank the countries as follows. So Morocco clearly leading and already in the second phase. Jordan more in a transitional phase between phase 1 and 2, followed by Israel and Egypt. And still in a pre-phase are Iraq, Yemen, and Palestine. And we can say for all countries that there is a progress in renewables, but despite the high potentials for renewables, this advantage is not fully being exploited in part due to, for example, high subsidies for fossils. But in general, all countries, they recognize the importance of energy efficiency, and many have developed national energy efficiency plans and targets. But there are large differences in the implementation of these measures between the countries. And the key drivers for the energy transition are not only the reduction of, for example, greenhouse gas emissions, but rather the fact that renewable energy, they can help to meet the growing demand and reduce also the dependence on imports or increase the energy security. And in the end also provide opportunities for economic development. And in summary, energy systems in Mina, they are in a developmental phase, and renewables energies are attractive, but the targets and the policies, they could be more ambitious in most countries. And with this, I would like to thank you for listening to my presentation, and I'm happy to take any question you have.
Thank you very much, Julia and Sibel. If any one of the participants have a question, please raise your hand. There's a button in the reaction icon that you can use to raise your hand, and if you'd like to talk. If you didn't find this button, please put in the chat box that you have a question, you would like to speak, or just put your question in the chat box so the Julia and Sibel could answer it. I'll just give you a couple of seconds to see if there's questions. All right. I mean, we still have time throughout this event. So even if you've thought of a question or you had technical difficulties, we can still ask it later on. And through the discussion as well. And now we could go directly to our panel discussion. Thank you again, Julia and Sibel. That was very enlightening and very interesting results. Again, the studies we have posted in the chat, you can look at them again. You can access them through the links existing on the FES website, with other studies as well. Now through now to the next session, we want to talk about the challenges and opportunities the MENA region faces. Through our very interesting guest that Sarah already introduced, we have with us Engineer Shuruq Abdelghani. She's the Director of Planning and Organizational Development in the department in the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources of Jordan. And we have Dr. Jawad Al-Kharraz. He's the Executive Director of the Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, also known as RICRE. Welcome and thank you both for accepting the invitation to join us in this discussion today. I could, if you allow me, I could start with Dr. Jawad. Dr. Jawad, thank you first very much for joining us today. Can you maybe first just introduce yourself and maybe briefly, like 1 minute, what's the RICRE doing, and then I can ask you something, another question.
Thank you very much, Abdullah. Good morning, everyone. Thanks a lot for having me today. My name is Jawad Al-Kharraz. I'm the Executive Director of the Regional Center for Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency, known by RICRE. So our main mandate is to support the Arab countries in their energy transition journey. So we support all the policy strategies in the field of renewable energy and energy efficiency, but also we promote the investment of private sector in these areas. So this is briefly myself and RICRE. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I think it's very interesting to know. We talked about different countries, and it would be interesting to connect it from a regional perspective. And from your point of view, where do you think is the points of strength or weaknesses for the region when you're thinking about the energy transition?
Thank you very much, Abdullah, for this very interesting question. I mean, I think the question somehow was responded in the report presented. I congratulate really FES and the Portal Institute for this very interesting report, which tackled sorry, a little bit the state of the art of the energy transition in the Mina region. Sorry, excuse me. So as you know, the main mandate, as I mentioned it, of RICRE since the beginning is to support Arab countries in their energy transition journey. We are the technical arm league of Arab states. So from the regional perspective, obviously, we look at the whole region and we try to develop the cooperation also between the Arab countries. We have been supporting the implementation of the national strategies in several Arab countries. And also, we have been supporting capacity development, supporting the legislative framework and the access to finance. In 2018, I need to highlight that we supported the League of Arab States in launching the Pan-Arab Sustainable Energy Strategy. And we implemented its action plan, the National Energy Efficiency Action Plan, and also the National Renewable Energy Action Plan, as well as its monitoring tools. For example, in the case of National Energy Efficiency Action Plan, we implemented a guideline that contributed in supporting and promoting Arab cooperation in the field of energy, in particular, improving the energy efficiency and rationalizing the use of the as a mean of achieving the sustainable development, SG7, etc. As you know, the renewable energy in the Arab region, highlighted also by the previous presentation, it's the mainstream in the region, particularly in the power sector. The investment in the Arab region over the past decade in solar and wind as well project exceeded $17 billion. There is obviously politically clear commitment to embrace strong forward-thinking policies and also capture the immense value of the renewable energy business and cross-border interconnections. There are many examples in the region. Also, several renewable energy support policies and financial instruments have proven to be effective in the region. Examples are the competitive bids and auctions for utility scale projects, resulting in a competitive renewable energy electricity prices. So obviously, these prices make possible, were possible because of the excellent solar and wind energy resources, backed also by some concessional finance, coupled by interesting policy measures to reduce the various risks or the risking, and encourage investment in this area. So to respond to your questions, obviously there are some strengths and some weaknesses. In terms of strengths, I can highlight, for example, that most of Arab countries have set their strategies, policies, regulations that are organized in the energy sector, in particular, including sustainable energy. Referring to, for example, to the Arab Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Guideline and AFEX, we know that in RICRE we produce every year the Arab Future Energy Index. We have two focuses, one on renewable energy and one on energy efficiency. So from this perspective, most of the Arab countries have a specific goal with specific target years to accelerate the renewable energy and energy efficiency. You mentioned, my colleagues in the previous presentation mentioned the different targets. For example, in Morocco, they set a very ambitious target. We're talking about 52% of the share of renewable energy in the mix of energy by 2030. We have also some similar, very close, ambitious also targets in Egypt and other countries. In terms of the institutional framework, also I saw some examples. In Morocco, for example, Lebanon, over the last decade, Arab countries have worked to improve this governance, let's say, this institutional framework through reforming energy tariff, for example, align with the policies that catalyze the decrease of the subsidized energy sector, in particular, for example, the Gulf countries. These steps led to raise awareness in the final consumer of the importance of renewable energy and energy efficiency. Within the Arab region as well, the dissemination of implemented policies and strategies, innovative instruments for promoting energy efficiency is rather sparse, unfortunately. Some of the existing energy solutions around the globe have not been transferred or adapted to the local context and applied in practice through the region. If I come to the weaknesses, I can mention the lack of funds for the large renewable energy projects, the lack of experience in some countries in the field of renewable energy and energy efficiency project. Also, I can also mention the coordination within the country, the governance, let's say, to implement energy-related plans and strategies. Sometimes there is a cross-cutting responsibilities. Sometimes, there is no coordination between different actors. Also, I can mention the lack of accurate and harmonized data that will be used in energy planning for decision maker and tracking the energy demand and supply. Also, another aspect like I should highlight here is the R&D is not accompanying the effort of renewable energy deployment and energy efficiency efforts. Also, the localization of the energy technologies is facing several struggles. So many efforts have been done, but still there is no real localization of the technology. Still, we are depending on the international market. So this is briefly some of the strengths and weaknesses. I can just also mention one strength is that political will. There is political will actually in many countries in the region to push this energy transition and the share of renewable energy in the mix of energy. As we mentioned Morocco, Egypt, for example, also we have very ambitious targets. So a political will is there, but obviously we need financial means. We need also to overcome the struggles at the same mentioned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jawad, for this, I would say, very good and comprehensive answer. And always talking with the energy transition, it's always a discussion in climate protection. Now we have facing this climate emergency, and in the next 2 years, we will have the Conference of Parties for climate change is going to happen in the region in the next 2 years. How the fact that we're gonna have them, we're gonna host them, one in Egypt and one in the UAE. How will this, do you think, is gonna help the region into the transition toward renewables?
Yeah, thank you very much, Abdullah, for this very interesting question. Indeed, if we take into account the economic and environmental and social impact of climate change and its impact over all the world, obviously boosting accelerated energy transition is one of the solutions in the region, which increase the local value added by creating jobs and pave the way for a reduction on subsidies, etc. So the fact that both COPs, next COPs, are organized within the Arab region, in Egypt and the UAE, it's definitely a golden opportunity for not only Egypt and UAE, but for the whole region, for the whole Arab countries, to attract, in particular, green investment, climate financing, and boost the transition towards renewables. And this is already happening, as both Egypt and UAE are attracting now investors and signing agreements on the production of, for example, green hydrogen, which requires obviously renewable, as you know. So the COP27 in Egypt will primarily focus on implementation. That's what was declared. So all the Arab countries are expected to show how they will, through legislation, policies, programs, through all the jurisdictions and sectors, begin putting the Paris Agreement into practice in their home countries. Also, the COP28 will focus on economic opportunities in the climate action in a way to drive economic growth and job creation in the Arab countries. So in both COPs, definitely there is a great opportunity to showcase the successful renewable energy project, the success stories in the Arab region, as well as to attract the new investment in renewable energy, also attract the world, the investment worldwide to the main areas where the investment is needed, including energy efficiency, and increase the share of renewable energy in the mix of energy, and accelerate, obviously, this way the energy transition. So definitely, this COP 27-28 will be a very, very good opportunity for the region to accelerate the energy transition and attract the investment, and also to learn from the experiences and success stories around the world. So over the next 50 years or so, we will transition to this more sustainable situation. So we are already, as I said, facing challenges of balancing supply and from renewables with demand at any point in time. But I think with the efforts, the current efforts, with the effort that will be made in the next period, the next decade, I think the COPs definitely are a good opportunity we need to exploit, we need to take advantage of it, and to make our energy transition successful.
Thank you very much. Well, I can't really agree more. It's really an opportunity for building partnerships, enhanced cooperation, and mobilizing finance, and for the better of the region. So these really important points. Thank you very much, Dr. Jawad.
Welcome, most welcome. If you allow me, Abdullah, I will just disconnect for a few minutes to respond to another meeting, and I will come back to respond to any question. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, so the participants, if anyone have a specific question for Dr. Jawad, you can still ask it in the chat box. You can also save it until he returns, and we will try to answer these questions. I would just like to remind everyone that we have graphic facilitation. We have a graphic designer with us that is representing our discussions in a visual manner to later, so we have a canvas of our thoughts and the results that we have throughout this discussion. Also, if anyone would like to speak, just a reminder that we have 3 languages, English, Arabic, and French. So please we try to not have a language barrier, as we have interpretation for all these 3 languages. And now I will go to our next very special guest and a dear friend of our team, Engineer Shuruq Abdelghani. Engineer Shuruq, since we had the poll at the beginning of this event, I was very actually surprised and with the result, and most of our participants said that the most important actor to engage is the government. I mean, it's not a surprise that it's not a correct answer, it's as a lot of people say that the challenges are the policies, and of course the government is always included, and it's maybe we should think about the government should be leading the energy transition, so there's different actors to be engaged. So I think there's maybe like a lot of thoughts and different participants to come, and as I believe energy transition, of course the government should be in the lead in that. And as we've seen through the study that Julia and Sibel introduced, Jordan is in the lead in the region. As a Jordanian, I'm proud to say that Jordan has a success story in renewable energy. Maybe not call it energy, not yet energy transitions. The targets are still, let me say, not energy transition yet. It's about more incorporating renewable energy security. So I would like to hear from you more as a representative of the government of Jordan. Let's say what are the steps and measures that Jordan take that it made it possible now to reach this stage?
Thank you, Abdullah. And let me first thank you and all the team for this important and interesting report that really allow the countries to know where they are in the energy transition and give them an idea about the other countries, and how can we benefit from the experience in the different countries to develop our policies and procedure regarding the energy transition. And allow me to switch to Arabic just to make a change in the discussion. هلا فيما يتعلق بالتنمية التحول نحو الطاقة المتجددة والتحول الطاقي بشكل عام، وصول الأردن لهذه المرحلة، إحنا بنعرف إنه بدأ الأردن بالعمل على الطاقة المتجددة منذ بدايات 2012 بإيجاد بيئة تشريعية وتنظيمية لتمهيد العمل نحو استخدامات الطاقة المتجددة. وإحنا بنعرف إيش أهمية هذا الموضوع للأردن، خصوصاً إنه الأردن دولة مستوردة للطاقة. وصل الاستيراد للطاقة في عام 2020 تقريباً 89%، ولكن هذه النسبة 89% مقارنة ب 2016 كانت النسبة 96%. هذا الانخفاض جاء بناء على ماذا؟ جاء بناء على التحول نحو مصادر الطاقة المحلية، والطاقة المتجددة هي من أهم مصادر الطاقة المحلية اللي حالياً بيتم الاعتماد عليها بهدف تخفيض الاعتماد على الاستيراد. طبعاً هذا الموضوع يتماشى، تحول نحو مصادر طاقة محلية، اعتماد بشكل كبير على الطاقة المتجددة، يقابله من الجانب الآخر برضو التحول وتحسين كفاءة الطاقة. هذا يتكامل مع أهدافنا الأخرى في تنويع مصادر الطاقة المستخدمة في الأردن، إضافة إلى تخفيض كلفة الطاقة على الاقتصاد الوطني، وهدفنا المتمثل أيضاً بجعل الأردن مركز إقليمي لتبادل الطاقة في المنطقة. بجوز إذا بدنا نحكي لقدام شوي عن هذا البند بقودنا للسؤال الأول، إنه كيف الأسباب السياسية ممكن أحد الأمور اللي لها أهمية كبيرة فيما يتعلق بالتحول نحو استخدام الطاقة المتجددة 100%. بداية خليني أحكي على الإجراءات اللي تم اتخاذها في الأردن فيما يتعلق بزيادة مساهمة الطاقة المتجددة، واللي وصلت في توليد الطاقة الكهربائية إلى 26%. أكيد هذه النسبة ما جاءت من فراغ، جاءت بناء على تنظيم وعمل تشاركي أيضاً، سواء مع القطاع الخاص، مع الجهات المانحة ومنظمات المجتمع المدني، فيما يتعلق بالترويج لاستخدامات الطاقة المتجددة على مختلف المستويات، سواء على مشاريع كبرى أو حتى على مستوى المشاريع الصغيرة. وهذه التشريعات النظيمة برضو تطورت، يعني بدأت بقانون الطاقة المتجددة، تطورت هذه التشريعات مع التغيرات التي في القطاع من ناحية إيجاد تعليمات وأنظمة متعلقة بالنت ميترينج والويلينج والتسهيل على ربط مصادر الطاقة المتجددة وأنظمة الطاقة المتجددة الصغيرة. هذه الإجراءات متكاملة أدت إلى زيادة مساهمة الطاقة المتجددة. زي ما حكيت سابقا كان دور كبير خصوصا في البدايات، العمل مع القطاع الخاص كان مهم جدا، وذلك لإنشاء المشاريع الكبرى. إضافة لذلك تأسيس صندوق الطاقة المتجددة عام 2015. هذا الصندوق جاء أيضا لتشجيع الترويج لاستخدامات الطاقة المتجددة على مستوى من خلال برامج مختلفة وتقديم حوافز لمختلف القطاعات بهدف فعلا تعزيز ثقافة التحول نحو الطاقة المتجددة. ولكن دائما احنا بنحكي قبل الطاقة المتجددة بيجي العمل على تحسين كفاءة الطاقة، وهذا أمر مهم جدا قبل التحول لدى خصوصا في بعض القطاعات مثلا كالقطاع الصناعي. لما بنحكي على تخفيض كلف طاقة مباشرة بدنا طاقة متجددة. العمل على برضو كفاءة الطاقة في مختلف القطاعات قبل كخطوة سابقة للطاقة المتجددة لخفض الكلف، بعتقد إنه هذا أمر مهم جدا. برضو لازم نعزز هاي الثقافة في مختلف القطاعات لحتى نوصل للمستهدفات اللي إحنا مسعى لها. برامج كانت متعددة من خلال صندوق الطاقة المتجددة وكفاءة الطاقة لتحفيز هذه القطاعات لحتى نعزز هذه الثقافة. كان النجاح كبير جدا فيما يتعلق في القطاع المنزلي خلال الفترة الماضية من خلال أنظمة الطاقة الشمسية، وجود عدد من دراسات التدقيق الطاقي لعدد من المصانع في القطاع السياحي، في مجال البلديات، في مجال المدارس. هذا من جانب آخر. من جانب آخر برضو إحنا ما بدنا الطاقة المتجددة تقتصر على عدد معين من الناس، أو الوصول لاستخدام أنظمة الخلايا الشمسية يقتصر فقط على الفئات المقتدرة على الشراء. من هون وبهدف برضو تخفيض كلف الطاقة على الفئات المحتاجة، جاء مشروع دعمنا من شمسنا اللي هو Solar to the Poor، وهذا المشروع بدعم الأسر المنتفعة من صندوق المعونة الوطنية من خلال تركيب أنظمة خلايا شمسية بدعم كامل 100% من وزارة الطاقة على حساب فلس الريف. هذا المشروع يعزز أيضاً استخدام الطاقة المتجددة وأنظمة الخلايا الشمسية لدى مختلف فئات المجتمع بهدف وصول الطاقة المتجددة لكافة الفئات. أكيد هذا كله موجود حتى نشتغل بسياسة واضحة، موجود ضمن استراتيجية قطاع الطاقة قطاع الطاقة للأعوام 2020-2030. تتضمن هذه الاستراتيجية كافة البرامج والمشاريع بهدف فعلا تعزيز التحول نحو مصادر الطاقة المحلية وخاصة الطاقة المتجددة. هلا أكيد اللي بيسمعني بيحكي طيب إحنا وصلنا 26%، أكيد بدنا أكثر، أكيد هذا الموضوع وفي قرارات عم تطلع، بدنا كمان إحنا نكون منطقيين. يعني وصلنا بإنجازات كبيرة في الطاقة المتجددة، ولكن في مرحلة ما واجهتنا تحديات اللي هي محددات الشبكة، ولكن أكيد ما في وقوف أمام هذه التحديات، لأنه التحول نحو الطاقة المتجددة أصبح ضرورة وواجب، خصوصاً مع التحولات اللي عم بتصير حالياً في العالم والتحديات اللي موجودة بنواجهها حالياً من حيث ارتفاع الأسعار أو أمن التزود بالطاقة، واللي عم بتواجهها حالياً معظم الدول واللي عم بنشوفها وكيف تأثرت قطاعات الطاقة في مختلف الدول نتيجة لهذه التحديات. محددات الشبكة بجوز خلال السنتين الماضيتين كانت من التحديات اللي عم بنواجهها لزيادة استخدام الطاقة المتجددة في توليد الطاقة الكهربائية، ولكن يتم العمل حالياً ورح نحكي عن الخطوات السابقة فيما يتعلق بتطوير الشبكة، التحول نحو التخزين والشبكات الذكية. الربط مع الدول المجاورة برضه مهم جدا، وهنا بدخل الجانب السياسي بالتحول نحو مصادر الطاقة المتجددة. بصراحة الربط مع الدول المجاورة له دور كبير جدا في فعلا إنشاء مشاريع طاقة متجددة وتصدير هذه الطاقة الكهربائية إلى دول الجوار. وبجوز اللي تابع مؤتمر حوار الطاقة اللي كان خلال الأسبوع الماضي، كانت من أهم المبادرات اللي دعا لها وزير الطاقة والثروة المعدنية اللي هي مبادرة للربط الإقليمي والدولي على مستوى الشبكات الكهربائية، لحتى فعلا نعزز فكرة تصدير الطاقة الخضراء لهذه الدول، وبنفس الوقت أنت تحقق تكامل فيما يتعلق بالطاقة الكهربائية بين مختلف الدول. هاي الإجراءات كافة نسعى لتحقيقها أكيد بالتعاون مع كافة الشركاء. بنفس الوقت نأكد دائما أن القطاع الخاص له دور كبير في تنفيذ هذه المشاريع. هناك فرص استثمارية برضو موجودة لحتى أنك تسرع من التحول الطاقي في الأردن. التحول نحو الطاقة المتجددة وزيادة استخدام الطاقة المتجددة هو هدف نسعى لتحقيقه. 31% لعام 2030 وجدنا أنه هذه النسبة قابلة للتحقيق وأعلى. حاليا بتم مراجعة استراتيجية قطاع الطاقة حتى نأخذ بعين الاعتبار كافة المستجدات اللي موجودة في القطاع لحتى أن نرفع هذه النسبة خلال السنوات القادمة. بالمقابل فيما يتعلق بتحسين كفاءة الطاقة، برضو عندنا نسبة الاستهداف تحسين كفاءة الطاقة بنسبة 9% بحلول عام 2030 مقارنة ب 2018. حاليا يتم العمل على مراجعة وتطوير الخطة الوطنية لكفاءة الطاقة لحتى فعلا يتم إيجاد عدد من البرامج والمشاريع بهدف تحسين كفاءة الطاقة في مختلف القطاعات لزيادة برضو التحول نحو الطاقة المتجددة خلال السنوات القادمة.
تمام. شكرا جزيلا مهندسة شروق. أنا ممكن في عندنا يوجد سؤال في الشات من أستاذ عبد الله بدير، وبيتكلم عن الوقت المتوقع للأردن أو الخطة المستقبلية للأردن إذا كان حيصير هناك في انتقال للطاقة. ممكن تعطينا نظرة إنه هل هذا النقاش يحدث الآن نحو الاستخدام الكامل للطاقة المتجددة، التحول الكامل، أم النقاش الآن هو للمستقبل القريب، للعقود القادمة، ما هي النسب المعقولة التي يمكن إدخالها للنظام الأردني؟
شكرا لهذا السؤال. بصراحة زي ما حكيت سابقا إنه فعلا إحنا وضعنا خطة ل 2030. هذه الخطة كانت النسبة المستهدفة 30%، بس العالم حوالينا عم بتغير، ما بصير نضل واقفين في مكاننا. تطوير الشبكة الكهربائية، الدراسات يتم العمل عليها حاليا لحتى فعلا نبين إيش الإجراءات اللي إحنا بنقوم فيها لحتى نحسن الشبكة الكهربائية لاستيعاب المزيد من الطاقة المتجددة. دراسة تحسين وتطوير الشبكة الكهربائية، دراسات التخزين بحيث إنه تحدد أنت وين أفضل أماكن للتخزين سواء على مستوى التوزيع أو على مستوى النقل. دراسة التعرفة الكهربائية، وهل هناك حاجة للتحول إلى التعرفة المرتبطة في الزمن، ما هي أنسب تعرفة كهربائية لمختلف القطاعات لحتى فعلا أنت تحفز القطاعات، لأنه زي ما بنعرف أسعار الطاقة دائما تعتبر من أهم التحديات خلال وجود أي صناعة موجودة في الدول. برضو التحول نحو استخدام الهيدروجين وإيجاد الدراسات الحالية اللي موجودة لاستخدام الهيدروجين، وزي ما بنعرف هلا هذا مفهوم بلش يدخل على كافة دول العالم، وهناك بحاجة للعمل، خصوصا إنه الأردن موجود ولديه قابلية لحيث يكون مصدر لاستخدام الهيدروجين نظرا لوجوده بمنطقة الهيدروجين الأخضر إحنا بنحكي، لأنه تولي باستخدام الطاقة المتجددة. هذه الدراسات والإجراءات اللي بتم العمل عليها حاليا إيش هدفها؟ هدفها فعلا إن نزيد من مساهمة الطاقة المتجددة. كل الشركات، القطاع الخاص أكيد بحاجة إنه، وخصوصا الشركات العاملة في الطاقة المتجددة، دائما بنواجه هذا السؤال، طيب وين إحنا رايحين؟ إيش اللي مطلوب منا؟ هذه الدراسات والإجراءات اللي راح تتم بناء على توصيات هذه الدراسات بالنهاية هدفها زيادة مساهمة الطاقة المتجددة. إحنا بنحكي على 31% من توليد كهرباء بنهاية 2031. حاليا بناء على نتائج هذه الدراسات جميعا بتم مراجعة الاستراتيجية. واحد من أهم الأهداف بالاستراتيجية إني أرفع نسبة مساهمة الطاقة المتجددة. إحنا بنحكي يعني نسعى إنها تكون 50% من هون ل 2030، ولكن برضو هذا الرقم ما بستطيع أحدده حاليا، لأنه أنا بحكي إني أنا بعتمد على نتائج دراسات. من هون لتطلع نتائج الدراسات إن شاء الله يعني بشهرين قادمين بنكون أنهينا دراسة الاستراتيجية، وبكون عندنا نسب متوقعة جديدة للتحول لاستخدام الطاقة المتجددة في توليد الطاقة الكهربائية. برضو بدي أشير لنقطة مهندس عبد الله، اللي هو مش بس هدول، يعني إحنا بنفس الوقت أنت بدك تعزز ثقافة برضو لدى المجتمع، لنعزز ثقافة تحسين كفاءة الطاقة. إحنا ماشي بنحكي عنا قدرة توليدية، ولكن بالمقابل ما بدنا إحنا استخدام الكهرباء يكون بطريقة غير كفؤة. تحسين كفاءة الطاقة برضو من الأمور اللي فعلا من خلال البرامج اللي موجودة، سواء بيقوم فيها صندوق الطاقة المتجددة أو حتى جهات متعددة في المملكة عم بتعزز هذه الثقافة، لها دور كبير جدا في تحسين كفاءة الطاقة. بنفس الوقت التحول نحو وسائل النقل الكهربائية برضو هذا من الأمور الهامة. أكيد ما بدنا نرجع نحكي هي حلقة متكاملة، وجود بنية تحتية مع وسائل نقل كهربائية، حوافز، موضوع متشابك مع أكثر من جهة، ولكن برضو تحول نحو وسائل النقل الكهربائية برضو من الأمور الهامة. في شغلة تانية برضو ركز عليها التقرير اللي هو موضوع الابتكار. فعلا يعني وموضوع الابتكار اللي بنحكي عنه دائما الابتكار طريق المستقبل، وحاليا بجوز مشاريع الطاقة اللي بيميزها إنها مشاريع طويلة مدى وبحاجة دائما لوقت لحتى إن ننفذ هذه المشاريع. ولكن هون بيجي موضوع دور الابتكار بهذا الموضوع. دور الابتكار له أهمية كبيرة، سواء في استخدام تكنولوجيات حديثة للتحول الطاقي، وبنفس الوقت هاي التكنولوجيات بتعطي كلف منخفضة، يعني كلف منخفضة، التسريع بإنجاز هذه المشاريع. برضو الابتكار له دور كبير جدا في التحول الطاقي خلال الفترات القادمة، والعالم ما عاد يستنى. يعني إحنا بحاجة لهذه التكنولوجيات بسرعة القصوى لحتى فعلا إنك تواجه التحديات وتجد حلول لهذه التحديات اللي عم بتواجه العالم أجمع فيما يتعلق بالتحول الطاقي.
فعلا مهندسة، وبتفق معك بالابتكارات، ويعني بحب الابتكارات تكون أيضا محلية، ابتكارات تخرج من الدول التي بحاجة لها، مش فقط في الضرورة ابتكارات من أوروبا أو من دول أخرى، ونطبقها تحفيز البحث والتطوير وتشجيع بيئة الأعمال بما يخص الطاقة أو الأعمال النظيفة كما يقولون لها. أريد أن أشبك من منحنى آخر. تكلمنا عن الوقت التي يمكن تستخدمه الأردن للمستقبل. مهندسة شروق تفضلت بكيف الآن توجد دراسات وتوجد تخمينات للانتظار بتوصيات أكثر لمعرفة ما يمكن أن نعمله في المستقبل أكثر. دكتور جواد، ممكن من وجهة نظر إقليمية كيف ترى أن تحول الطاقة أو انتقال الطاقة أو تحول أكثر للطاقة المتجددة ممكن أن يحدث داخل المنطقة العربية من ناحية وقت؟ الآن في أوروبا مثلا هناك مدة حتى 2050، الكثير منهم بالنسبة لهم هو هذا الوقت التي من خلالها تحصيل على الأقل الجزء الأكبر من انتقال الطاقة. لكن على المستوى الإقليمي هنا بوجود أولويات مختلفة لدول كثيرة، بوجود أيضا موارد مختلفة، موارد محدودة، كيف ترى أن هذا الانتقال سيحدث داخل المنطقة؟
شكرا عبد الله على السؤال. بطبيعة الحال التحول الطاقي في المنطقة العربية طبعا مسار ابتدأت الدول العربية قبل فترة. هناك طبعا دول ربما في المقدمة قامت مجهودات يعني جبارة، وفي العروض السابقة تم إلقاء الضوء على بعض النماذج. وفي نفس الوقت هناك طبعا دول عربية تعاني من بعض المشاكل، يعني الوضع ربما السياسي والاقتصادي والاجتماعي يجعل موضوع تسريع عملية انتقال الطاقي أصعب من دول أخرى. طبعا الحال هناك ارتباط اقتصادي ما بين الدول العربية وأوروبا، وبالتالي طبعا الحال الالتزامات أو بالأحرى أي يعني طموحات من الجانب الأوروبي أكيد سوف يكون لها انعكاس في الدول العربية. عندما نتحدث مثلا قبل أسبوع كنا في الأردن خلال حوار الطاقة المستقبلي بين الدول العربية أو دول شمال أفريقيا والشرق الأوسط وأوروبا، بطبيعة الحال كان هناك تأكيد على هذه الروابط، يعني خصوصا لما نتحدث عن الاقتصاد الهيدروجين. الاقتصاد المستقبلي سوف يعتمد ربما على الهيدروجين الاخضر. طبعا لا زالت هناك تحديات تكنولوجيه، لكن بدات الجهود من الان. اكيد سوف يكون هناك ارتباط. نتحدث عن اوروبا ورغبتها في استيراد الهيدروجين الاخضر او مشتقاته من الدول العربيه. طبعا من الدول العربيه الامر لا يتعلق فقط بانه نتبع الترند او نتبع ما يقرر يعني خارجا، لكن فعلا هناك ارتباط اقتصادي عالمي في عالم معولم، مضطرين بطبيعه الحال ان يكون هناك ارتباط، وفي نفس الوقت طبعا يلبي حاجات داخليه. كيف نحول هذا الارتباط الى يعني شيء يخدم المجتمعات العربيه من جانب اقتصادي، من جانب اجتماعي، من خلق فرص شغل، من جانب يعني كذلك بيئي. وبالتالي طبيعه الحال يعني اولويات الدول العربيه اعتقد تصب في نفس الاتجاه، لان كل الدول سواء الدول العربيه او دول اوروبا يعني ملتزمه باتفاقيه باريس للمناخ، وعندها طبعا يعني التزامات اخرى من قبيل اهداف التنميه المستدامه الامميه. وبالتالي طبيعه الحال الاولويات تتشابه، حده الاولويه او كذا تختلف، لكن هناك اولويه يعني توفير الطاقه مستدامه في الدول العربيه هو يعني هدف يعني كل الدول العربيه. مره اخرى طبعا هناك يعني مستوى يعني تحقيق الاهداف مختلف من الدول العربيه الاخرى، بسبب طبعا في دول عربيه المناخ الاستثماري، مناخ الحكامه القطاع والمناخ الاقتصادي يجعلها اكثر يعني قابليه يعني لهذا الاقتصاد المستقبلي. ودول عربيه اخرى طبعا تحتاج مساعده من مناظرتها العربيه، تحتاج مساعده ايضا من الخارج عن طريق تمويلات، عن طريق يعني برامج تدريب الى اخر ذلك. هذا باختصار اتمنى ان اكون قد اجبت على سؤالك. شكرا.
شكرا جزيلا دكتور جواد. If you allow me, maybe I see there's questions in the chat, but I would also, before we maybe revisit them again, I would like to open the floor if someone from our partners or our colleagues in FES different offices would like to come in and say a few words about their role in this project, or also their points of view on the countries they overlooked. So please, if you would like to make this input, raise your hand and I will give you the floor to speak. All right. I will allow, Mr. Mohsen Sabra. Please go ahead and make it short, please.
السلام عليكم. أنا محسن صبرة من شركة مواصلات مصر. مواصلات مصر هي شركة خاصة بتعمل في مجال النقل العام في القاهرة مصر. عندي سؤال للمهندسة شروق تحديدا على البابليك ترانسبورتيشن والسستينبل بابليك ترانسبورتيشن والتحول إلى استخدام الأسطول الكهرباء وما يتبع ذلك من الانرجي ريستراكشر اللي بتبقى مطلوبه على مستوى الدوله. هل تم اي شيء في هذا المجال او هي الاردن وضعت اي خطط لهذا الموضوع؟ شكرا.
شكرا استاذ محسن. مهندس شروق تقدرين تفضلي تجاوبي السؤال.
شكرا جزيلا على هذا السؤال. بصراحة يعني من ناحية الخطط هناك خطط عديدة. يعني موضوع النقل الكهربائي زي ما حكيت هو بالأردن لسه وجود أكثر من جهة تعنى بهذا الموضوع. بصراحة هو برضو من أهم التحديات. يوجد إجراءات على سبيل المثال بأمانة عمان الكبرى من ناحية استخدام عدد من الباصات فيما يتعلق بالباص السريع. في وزارة النقل لديها عدد من المشاريع باستخدام يوجد مشروع التطور الحضري في منطقة عمان والزرقاء. سيتم استخدام عدد من الباصات، جزء من هذه الباصات كباصات كهربائية. ولكن بصراحة الخطط والتحول نحو وسائل النقل الكهربائية ما زال بحاجة إلى إيجاد عدد من القرارات. يعني الخطط موجودة بالتحول نحو وسائل النقل الكهربائية في القطاع العام، جزء من الاستراتيجية الخاصة بقطاع الطاقة. هناك 4 مشاريع فيما يتعلق بتحفيز التحول نحو وسائل النقل الكهربائية في القطاع العام، تحفيز استبدال الحافلات الحالية في القطاع العام إلى حافلات كهربائية، إيجاد آليات لتحفيز المواطنين للتحول نحو وسائل النقل الكهربائية. ولكن العمل ما زال بصراحة بحاجة إلى تشبيك وتعاون أكثر بين الجهات بإيجاد قرار يلزم بعض الجهات بالتحول نحو وسائل النقل الكهربائية، خاصة في هذه المرحلة. يعني عندك قدرة إنتاجية على الطاقة الكهربائية، عندك بالتالي هناك إمكانية لإيجاد آليات التحفيز التحول نحو زيادة من وسائل النقل الكهربائية. ولكن بالمقابل المواطنين بيطلبوا دائما حوافز للتحول نحو وسائل النقل الكهربائية. هذه الحوافز فعلا ما زالت بحاجة إلى دراسة أكبر وقرارات من بعد دراسة تشاركية بين مختلف الجهات المعنية بصراحة، لحتى فعلا تحفيز التحول للمزيد من وسائل النقل الكهربائية لحتى فعلا تحقق الطموحات. يعني حاليا وسائل النقل الكهربائية الموجودة في الأردن كهربائية مش هايبريد 1.7% فقط من عدد السيارات الكلي الموجود في المملكة، ومعظمها برضه يتركز في العاصمة عمان. فإحنا بدنا نشتغل على جزئين اللي هي البنية التحتية، واللي حاليا عم تشتغل عليها هيئة تنظيم قطاع الطاقة والمعادن بإيجاد عدد من المحفزات لإيجاد بنية تحتية ومحطات شحن كهربائية في مختلف مناطق المملكة، لحتى فعلا تنعكس كمواطن لزيادة زيادة استخدامه لوسائل النقل الكهربائية. وبالنقل العام فعلا إحنا بحاجة لعمل أكبر مع وزارة النقل وهيئة تنظيم النقل الكهربائي لحتى فعلا نعزز هذا التوجه. موجودة هذه المشاريع، ولكن فعلا إحنا بنسعى لتحقيق أهداف أكبر ونسبة أكبر بالتحول نحو وسائل النقل الكهربائية. لأنه هلأ يعني بعد عدد من السنوات الشركات نفسها ما رح تنتج سيارات محركات، بالتالي أنت أصبح إجباري أنك تجد آليات لتحفيز المواطنين لحتى فعلا تشجعهم منذ الآن للتحول نحو وسائل النقل الكهربائية. شكرا. إن شاء الله رح يكون في تعاون بيننا وبين مصر قريبا كمان فيما يتعلق بهذا الموضوع.
شكرا مهندس. هاي الجملة الأخيرة كانت عبارة عن حافز للمستقبل، تعاون بين الدول العربية أكثر لمنفعة المنطقة. شكرا جزيلا. احنا بدأنا ندخل في وقت ضيق نحو نهاية هذا النشاط، لكن إذا تسمحون أعزائي الحضور ممكن إحنا نأخذ كم من دقيقة إضافية لنسمع من أشخاص مشاركين أكثر. فأستاذ خالد دباس تفضل.
I'm Khalid Al-Dabbas from Fraunhofer Institute for System and Innovation, Karlsruhe. Thank you for organizing this event, Friedrich Albert Stiftung, Abdallah, Sarah, everyone. And thank all the panelists for their interesting presentations. I have one question to Wuppertal Institute, and you showed the really interesting insights. And in one of your figures, you showed different phases for different phases to translate into a climate neutral energy system. And you've allocated different countries into these different phases. My question is, did you also look or consider instruments? What kind of instrument are working, and what instruments are missing to achieve the targets? So we know from the European Union that you need, for example, a certain instrument to provide incentives for certain industries or for certain sectors to change into a climate neutral economy. So what are the instruments that we need to accelerate this transition in Jordan or in the Mina region generally?
Please, Julia or Sibel, you would like to take this question?
Yeah, I can start maybe, and Sibel can add if she has something to say on it also. Well, yeah, we looked at the different phases, and what we showed now was really just the basic of one phase, but we have like a list of over 100 different indicators for governance level, for technical level, and we looked at all these different indicators, if they are there, if they're partly there, and then based on this assessment classified the countries in which phase they are and which would be the next steps to take to move forward. And the next steps are varying from country to country, depending on where they are and what they've already achieved. But I think for most countries, the next steps moving forward will be moving towards flexibility options, because if you want to have interconnections, because if you want to move forward into a larger share of renewables, this is essential. And also, if you're talking about exporting fuels in the future, you need to bring, for example, the renewable electricity or the fuel to the harbor sites where you could export these. And also, the demand centers are often not at the same spot where the best potentials are. So I think this grid extension and flexibility options are a general topic for all countries. But maybe Sibel, I'm not sure if you want to add to this, because you have conducted most of the country assessments.
Okay, thank you so much for the question. I can add some little things, like we had, of course, a criteria sets that we applied to each country, and then we looked, okay, this country needs still to improve, for example, renewables take off, and then especially we had a criteria sets for the first phase, as for example, does renewable replace fossil fuels, or are there efforts to accelerate the efficiency improvements, or the national and transnational grid extension, is that happening, or retrofitting of the electricity grid, and so on. So these are some criteria that are for the first phase. They need to be completed in order that we say, okay, this country has achieved the first phase, and for Jordan explicitly, for example, as you asked for Jordan, we said it's in a transitional phase because there are some criteria that Jordan already has completed for the second phase, which are, for example, the assessment of regional potentials of different flexibility options, as the colleague from the ministry said already. There are different plans and strategies and studies already carried out. And so we said, okay, this is already completed for the Jordan case, but also there are some experiments already for flexibility options. So these were some of the criteria that were already for Jordan given, but some of the criteria which, for example, touch digitalization or ICT startups, business models, but also actor networks, they are still missing in Jordan, or they are not yet completed. They have started, but are not yet completed. And interesting is also that Jordan has already started some of the criteria for the third phase even. So there are some studies and assessment potentials that have been carried out for power to X conversion routes, and so this is very at an initial stage, but these are some of the criteria we looked at, and then we said, okay, the assessment of a certain country is according to this criteria given or not.
Okay, thank you for your answer. But what I was wondering, like, for example, is there a quota system? So we have seen a quota system in the European Union. We have seen ETS system. Is there any really plans or instrument that we could measure on the long term, or is it rather on the strategy side and roadmaps development?
If you allow me, that we're really running short on time, and maybe if we can maybe try to answer this question just at the end, whoever wants to stay, so we just like to respect everyone's time, and go towards the end of our event, and then whoever wants to stay, and then we can have more of a chat. Now, as we mentioned before, we have a graphic facilitation. And we would like to show you the visual representation of the discussions that we had today. So please, Jana is with us, the graphic facilitator. Can you please share your screen and share the results? I'm looking forward to see it. You can share your screen. Okay, well, we need 2 minutes. So in general, I would say, yeah, then I would first like to thank everyone who was with us here today, to from the participants, that you took your time to come and join us in the discussions, for the wonderful questions that you raised, and for our wonderful speakers and panelists and special guests, and for our partners at the Wuppertal Institute. And thank you very much to making this project doable. And it's really a tool that is needed to understand what are we doing here in the region, and what should we maybe do next. Sibel or Julia, if you would like to touch upon the question of Khaled briefly, you can maybe go ahead.
Yeah.
You're muted, Julia. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, I think he was mentioning the emission trading system, and this type of systems we didn't look at these types of instruments for the MENA region. And I think we see the discussion in Germany, or in Europe in general. I think this kind of systems, you need stronger regional cooperation to implement something like this on a regional level. And if you look at the incentives, for example, for energy intensive industries in the MENA region, there to switch to less carbon intensive production pathways, this is not really given yet. So to decarbonize these types of sectors, I think that needs to be a lot of development. And I think maybe the renewable development in the electricity sector is currently the focus. But of course, if you want to move to these 100% renewables of the entire energy sector, these are steps that need to be taken in the future, but which are not yet taken in most MENA countries, these type of instruments. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Asim Nabilsi, did you have a question or was it resolved?
Yes, I'm very happy with the presentation and the big body of work that was done. It's really good to see what the other countries in the region are going to and going through, because it touches on all aspects of our lives as citizens, for households, for industry, for agriculture, and for the governments, and the cost it has for them, because you are incurring a lot of costs for energy and fuel. The apparent thing is that there is no magical solution and one size does not fit all. I agree with Mr. Khalid Dabas and with other speakers, is that also it's very important to look at the way forward and how we can help the countries. I will go back to your initial, let's say, mini questionnaire, where you asked which are the most important factors. I think maybe the government or the regulations are the most important, but they cannot work alone. I think we need to work on all of them in parallel if we need to get the solutions. I think in many of the countries we are getting lots of traction. I think we are really behind. We lost lots of valuable time. So I think this study would be a very valuable base to go ahead and build on it for all of the countries that are in the region.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Asim. And
thank you.
Yeah, we can already see that the graphic facilitation is ready, and yeah, we of course there's many parts and aspects of this. We're going to share with you this visualization for the participants, and we talked about having local energy resources more, mobilizing finance, about the great energy potential that we have in this region, and the opportunity that this energy transition could open for us. Thank you very much, Yana, and for this nice presentation. And thank you again, everyone. At the end, I would like to have a special thanks and mention for my colleague, Dina Al-Kisbi. She was the organizers behind all of that, but for special circumstances, she couldn't be with us today. And I would like to thank her dearly for that. And thank you for the interpreters. Thanks again for our partners, and hopefully see you again in other events. And for the fellows who are in Jordan, we will launching the Jordan version of the study focused on Jordan. We're going to have a deeper discussion onto Jordanian regulations. This will happen after tomorrow. If you haven't already registered, please do. It's an in-person event, so and yeah, so there's no participation online. Thank you again, everyone, and sorry for taking more of your time. And we will see you later, hopefully.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.